I'm speaking to Carlos de la Fuente, a humanitarian who's done quite a few things, and I'd like to hear a little bit about all those things. Let's start off with, you were an officer at one point, a police officer, and you were in the court system, a lawyer, and then you gave that all up and decided to work pro bono for a while for the homeless. So why did you all of a sudden make that move?
You know, I had that in my mind for many years, a big chunk of my life, but I had always had responsibilities. You know, I started working when I was 16, 17. My dad died, and my mom and I were alone. My mom is a Mexican woman who spoke no English. She had been a housewife, and so I started working at 17, and I worked, for the rest of my life. And then in my mid-40s, I had been married, and I split up from my wife, and first wife, and my wife died. My mother died at the same time, so all of a sudden I had no responsibilities, and wow, I'm free now. So it's time to do the things that I've been wanting to do all my life when I have not had to have a job. So I was, at the time I was a judge, and I thought, I'd rather be doing service work. So I left the bench. And first thing I did, I went to the Inner City Law Center, which is a place that helped the homeless. And I was there for about a year. And then I heard about the Great Peace March. And they were coming through town, or they were starting in Los Angeles on their walk across the country.
This is the Peace March in 1986.
The Great Peace March from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. And I thought, gee, that's very nice. But I'm busy. I was doing a big important housing case, and suddenly the case settled a month after I saw the marchers. So I thought, hey, it's something I'd like to do. I don't have that responsibility anymore. So I first worked for the office of the Great Peace March. They were having financial problems, so I worked in the office as a volunteer. And then in the end of June of '86, I said I'm going to join with the marchers. So I drove out there and joined the march. And I arrived when they were in Nebraska, and I started walking. And about 2 weeks after I joined the march, we were in this little town one day, and I saw this very attractive lady setting up her tent. So I did what any gentleman would do. I went out there and I started playing my guitar for her. And that attractive lady was my wife, Mariana. So we've been together ever since. That was in '86.
What does it do for you to get involved in these sort of things?
Well, I feel so fortunate to live in this beautiful planet. I have so much, God, look at this beauty all around us, and I'm just trying to give back a little bit. We're fortunate. I see how bad things are getting, and I would like to do more. I'm trying to do more, but it worries me.
Now, you also were in involved in another march on another continent. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that evolved? Why did it evolve?
Well, we were asking the American people to disarm, nuclear disarmament, and we were walking. Mariana and I were walking through the middle of the country one day, and somebody yelled at us, "Why don't you go march in Russia?" And I thought, gee, what a good idea. So I approached my friend Alan Affeld, and I said, "Alan, what do you think about you and I organizing a walk through the Soviet Union?" And he agreed with me, and we were dressed the way you are dressed right now. It smelled about the same. And we went to the Soviet embassy. We knocked on their door, and someone opened the door and said, "Yes." And we said, "We're with the Great Peace March, and we'd like to do a walk in your country." What? So we spoke to the attaché there at the embassy in Washington, D.C., and he said, "Well, you know, I'm going to contact the Soviet Peace Committee and see if they are interested." So within 2 or 3 weeks, they contacted me, and they said the Soviet Peace Committee is interested. So, and we will meet with you and your delegation in Moscow, and we are willing to finance your trip out there. I said, "No, we can finance our trip." Then I thought, whoops, I don't have any money. But I went out to scrounge for some money. The problem was that my friend Alan had returned to Los Angeles, nowhere to be found. He was coming back on a motorcycle. So I checked around the march and found some distinguished people. Really, it was a good delegation. I found a Franklin Folsom, who had written some 30 books, another man who was a Russian literature professor, and a woman who was a professor at a university of computers. So the four of us drove to Moscow, or went to Moscow, and spoke with the upper levels of the Soviet government. My counterpart was the president of the Soviet Senate. And they were very receptive to our march, and we agreed to a march of 200 Americans and 200 Soviets from Leningrad to Moscow. That was in December of '86 that we were in Moscow, and we were in negotiations and in planning for months, and then in June of '87, 200 of us flew to Moscow. We ended up in Leningrad and began our march from Leningrad and started walking towards Moscow, a distance of 400 miles. And it was a wonderful thing. We would get to these villages, and the entire village would come out to greet us. We would be going through the country, and all these people would be lining the roads just to get a glimpse of the Americans who wanted peace. We arrived in Moscow on the 4th of July of 1987 and went through the Kremlin, carried the American flag and the Soviet flag. We were marching side by side. We walked straight to Moscow Stadium, and we had, my friend Alan had connections with Bill Graham, and we had arranged for a concert out there. So 4th of July at Moscow Stadium, there was this major concert with Bill Graham, James Taylor, Bonnie Raitt,
Wow. Santana.
Yeah, Carlos Santana, and it was just a really, about 10,000 people were out there at the stadium, and that was the conclusion of the march. But very sad thing, not a word about this in the U.S. media. Not one tiny word about the entire march. Here was a major march. 500,000 people greeted the Americans, and never anything was said in the American media. So we came back. It was a beautiful, beautiful trip. It lasted a month. And we came back, and we were getting married. I was getting married. Mariana and I were getting married, and our daughter was approaching, and I had to go back to work. And as much as I hated going back to lawyering, I returned to lawyering and worked for the next, well, until 1984 where I thought I was retiring. We came back to this area.
That was
94, yeah, 94. It was a wonderful thing that happened to me, is to have a family. I had expected to be traveling and conquering the world, and suddenly I have a family, and I had not expected that. It was such a wonderful thing. I felt it was my reward for giving up what I had given up.
So I think it's safe to say you would do the same thing all over again if you had to.
I would. Well, I'm trying to do. I would like to know what to do. You know, there's so much that needs to be done. You know, our world is in trouble, real trouble, and I would like to know what to do. Well, I'm glad to see people like you guys, doing the sacrifice that you're making.
Well, thank you very much, Carlos. You're definitely an inspiration, and it was our tremendous good fortune to have hiked into you yesterday.
Yes, that was so interesting. We were just walking along the road, and here you guys are coming from the opposite direction, and I thought you were doing. Oh, these people are doing a long march. I guess you're going to Lake Tahoe, which is 100 miles from here. I said, are you guys going to Lake Tahoe? Well, we're going past Lake Tahoe. We're going to Connecticut.
Thank you.